Have you ever wanted to do competition barbecue, but you don't really know how to do it? Well, my name is Mark Ashby of Grill Mark Co, and today we're going to be cooking competition barbecue in our own backyard on this Kamado Joe Classic. Follow me to the kitchen. Let's get started. We're in the kitchen now and we're gonna start up our pit. I've already lit the coals, but I have the iCommand going, which is a temperature control system brought to you by Kamado Joe. It comes in this nice case like this. I already have it hooked up. So I open up the app from my home screen. We're gonna be running our temp today at 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, once we do that, we choose our protein, which is here. We're going to an internal temperature of 195. I have a food probe that I'm gonna put in, and then boom. And this is how my pit is gonna start up and maintain temperature today at 300. Kamados are generally very, very efficient. This is just a cool piece of technology that we'll be using in the meantime. Now, we have our brisket. Let's get that started. In order to go viral, we have to pick up our meat and slap it like that. Competition barbecue is very, 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 I don't know if I told you, but it is very, very different than your normal backyard barbecue because you have to cut the slices within the box. We're using the point here as the burnt ends part. We are gonna make these the slices here, and we're gonna separate the two eventually once they hit about 165. We wanna get a good crust, but we wanna maintain moisture. There's lots of things that are gonna go onto this. And right now I have an 8.22 pound brisket, and you're gonna see me trim off way more than I ever have in any brisket video I've done. So I'm gonna take this out of the cryo vac. We're gonna take a look at it and see how it looks out of the bag and how much fat, which you can tell we have lots of fat on here already. We're gonna see how much that we're gonna be trimming off, and I'm not gonna be getting rid of all that fat though, and some of the meat that I'm cutting off. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Now if you look down right here, we have, this is a select brisket. It's not choice, but I got it at Walmart. We see we got good fat here. Now the brisket is two muscles that lay on top of each other like this. The flat comes up, the point goes down underneath, and that's what we see kind of right here in this fatty vein is the connecting of the two, and you can see as you follow the fat vein right here, that's the two muscles laying on top of each other. It's important when you're cooking competition brisket that you have it cut kind of in a square like the box, the blind box that you have to turn in. We're gonna be removing tons and tons of this fat here, all the silver skin you see right here, and the thing you need, a good pair of gloves and a very sharp knife. The first thing we're gonna do is, if you see all this kind of gray color right here, we're just gonna start removing some of that. I'm just gonna put it to the side and just kind of square it off a little bit here. Anything old, been sitting around for a minute, take it off and move it to the side. Now all of our scraps that we have here, we're setting off to the side. We're not throwing them away. What we're gonna do is take some ground beef. We're gonna grind this up with it because we are gonna have some extra meat in there as well, not just the fat that we're cutting out. And we are going to grind that up and make a nice brisket blend of ground beef for burgers probably later. When you are cutting your brisket and you're shaping it out, your knife is generally gonna be the size of the box. So you wanna kinda use that to measure here, and you can see, so I wanna kinda start a cut right about here to square it off a little bit. And then I know that my cuts, my slices are coming from right in this area here. Now I have a nice blade, so we're gonna cut this out, and we're also gonna take out some of that silver skin as we do it. That silver skin's not gonna render. Just kind of get under that. Be careful. Pull it up and cut away like that. And that's that silver skin. That's the stuff that is no good. And if you are in a KCBS competition or anything else, you'll know that this can have a weird texture to it, and it's going to change the flavor, and it could cause you a lot of points when you are being judged. So again, just kind of pull it up. A lot of this video is going to be me carving it, because the cook, we're probably going to trim down, I don't know, 3 to 4 pounds of this. And I'm going to cut right here. That way I know which way to cut against the grain. And we're going to take this fat vein here, and we're going to kind of cut that out. Now in a normal backyard brisket, this stuff would be good, but this is not backyard brisket. You can see I'm kind of cutting in at a V here, because we still want the meat, just not the fat. But you can see right here, there's that. So I'm just following that with the knife here and cutting across until I get all that fat. Look at that fat vein. All that. Not gonna render down. Not good. Look at that right there. I'm gonna keep trimming this up a little bit. We'll come back and we'll see how it looks. Now, in some competitions also, they separate the point and the flat here. The flat here, the point here. Points for the burn ends. This is for the slices. We're gonna cook this kind of as one whole piece a little bit, and then we'll separate it later in the cook. Let me trim this down just a little bit more, and we'll be back here at the end of that, kind of show you where we're at. Now, you can see that this looks way different than when we last saw it. And I still have a few more cuts here just to kind of trim this out. I want to have some good aerodynamic shape to it. Think about aerodynamics. The smoke is going to come over this and add that flavor to it. So that's what we want. I'm going to finish trimming this up just a little bit more here. And you can see if I started cutting along right here, this is where the point and the flat would separate, right there along that fat vein. And that's where they lay on top of each other, like I said earlier. KCBS just changed their rules recently where you can now split it into two. We're not going that route. We're gonna go whole brisket and then split it later. The reason we cut off a lot of the edges like this and we rounded them down, and again, I know this isn't perfect. This is competition beginner, but there's a lot better experts out there than me. But we rounded off a lot of these edges because we want bark all the way across, evenly across, coming around the edges here on the top. And this is everything that I trimmed off right here. This is probably 2.5 to 3 pounds of fat and meat that we're gonna grind up on our KitchenAid a little bit later and mix in with some ground beef to have some nice brisket burgers. So there is our perfectly trimmed select competition backyard barbecue. We are going to inject this with some reserve blend from KosmosQ, and we're gonna be using our spit jack to do that. But what we wanna do first, while again the pit is coming up to 300 degrees temperature, and a little secret of the pit masters out there that probably most of them won't tell you, but Cosmo let it out, is that the higher you run your temp, so at about 300, 350, that brisket's gonna plump up really nice.
Got it on, I put it on at 350. I have my pit pegged at 350, and what that does, a lot of people don't even know this. When you put that beef on at a higher temp, it's gonna pop up, and you'll see it here in a minute.
But we're using 3 simple rubs today. We have the KosmosQ Texas beef, that's gonna be our first layer. We have some cow cover, that'll be our second layer. And our third layer is the Grillahollics SPG with butter. This is a new rub, salt, pepper, garlic with butter. It's called the SPG Twisted, and this stuff is killer. I'll have a link down below where you can get it. But let's throw on our light coating of Texas beef first. And make sure you get the sides as well. That's important. When it comes to competition, uniformity, there we go. Good coat of that. Next, the cow cover. This will add a nice color to it, but will give you some amazing flavor as well. And then lastly, the Twisted SPG from Grillahollics. And there we go. While the pit comes up to temp, I'm gonna let this sit out for about 10 to 15 minutes and let some of that salt absorb. The reason we cut off as much fat as we did is because those flavors are not gonna penetrate through, but now there's not any barrier between the flavors, the rubs, and the salt and everything else. Now on the bottom, I did not trim any of this right here. And the reason is because that's gonna be the barrier. We're gonna be going fat side down. But once we bring this off and we use our slices and we put it in the blind box, we're gonna trim that bottom part off. So this is just using as a barrier. It will render down a little bit, and we're just gonna let this sit. I'm gonna go wash my hands and mix up some of that injection. We're using the reserve blend here, and I did something a little bit different. It says mix it with 2 cups of liquid to 1/3 cup of powder, which we got the powder down at the bottom here. I did 1 cup of water distilled, and then I used 1 cup of bone broth. Nice. Damn it. I figured, hey, if it's gonna go for a competition, we're going for 1 bite. That's all the judges get, is 1 bite of flavor. So now we're gonna shake this up as good as we can, and then we're gonna inject it. This has been sitting about 10 minutes. We shook up the reserve blend right here. We got a nice frothy mixture. Now we want to come in at an angle when we are injecting. If you go straight down, you're going to be able to see the injection marks. And again, it's all about presentation, 1 bite taste. So we're going to go at an angle, and I'm just going to, you can kind of see it plump up there a little bit. And we're going in about 1 inch spaces. And we're going to be doing that all across. And you want to go in a checkerboard pattern until you get all of it done. When you're done injecting, the pit is up to temp. So I'm transferring this to a pan. We're going to step outside and throw this baby on the Kamado Joe. I'll see you out there. It's sitting directly at 300. Come around here, you'll see. This is not an exaggeration. This is how precise the eye command is. 300 degrees Fahrenheit, about 150 Celsius, somewhere around there. And we're gonna take our food probe that's plugged into port 1, and we're gonna put it in the thickest part of the brisket. We're gonna load this up here. Here's our grate probe. And there we go, just like that. We're gonna bring this down. Kamados are super efficient when it comes to cooking, and all we're gonna have to do literally is kind of set it and forget it. I got some big block running in there, the lump charcoal from Kamado Joe as well, and we're just gonna let it do its thing. We're gonna pull this out at about 165 because then it's gonna have that color that we're looking for. Backyard brisket looks for that really nice dark bark that has a lot of texture. Competition barbecue does not have that. We don't want that. We want this kind of nice mahogany color to it. So we're gonna let this sit here, check back in a few hours. This isn't gonna take long because it's a small brisket. We'll check back in a couple hours, see where we are. Once it hits 165, we're gonna wrap it in some paper, and then we're gonna throw it back on and let it ride till it's about 195, 205, somewhere in that range. And then we're gonna let it rest and then slice into it. The brisket has finally hit a 165 internal. Come over here, let's check it out. This is about the color that we want right there. Beautiful. Still have some of that liquid on top. You can see some of that. It's about to hit the stall. So we're gonna pull out the food prep here. I'm gonna put it back in the pan. And really quickly, we're gonna go wrap this up twice in some butcher paper and throw it back on the smoker. Now we can see that it still has that liquid pooling, which is good. The Kamado is doing its job, which is to maintain that moisture. So we're gonna wrap this up twice, that's important, 2 times, with butcher paper. And that's what you want. We're gonna throw this back on the pit and we're gonna let it sit until it's about 198, 200, somewhere in that range on the inside. We're gonna let this sit and ride a little bit longer till, again, 198, 205. We'll see you back then. The brisket's been going about maybe 4 hours, which is kind of on par, about 1 pound per hour. It's probing pretty tender for where I'm at right there. So we're gonna take this off. We're gonna hop back inside. We're gonna let the steam come off and we're gonna slow it down on the cooking process. And then we're gonna let it sit in the cooler for about an hour or so. And then we'll slice into it, put some Brisket Mop on, make this thing the best backyard competition barbecue brisket you've ever had. We'll see you in a few. Now, as you look down here, you can see that this does not have the same kind of bark that a normal backyard brisket would have. But we're using our ThermoPro here, and it is taking the temperature, looks like it's about 194 almost here, 198 right there, 199. This is about where we want it to be. So I'm gonna let this sit out for about 10 minutes so that it takes all the steam out and it stops cooking, or at least slows it down a lot. We're gonna rewrap it and then we're gonna throw it in the cooler that I have behind me for about another hour or so, and then we'll slice right into this bad boy and see how it tastes, see how it looks. Hopefully I did the barbecue community, especially the competition community, justice. But this is our end result here. Again, this was a small brisket to begin with, but what we're gonna do now is we're going to separate the flat from the point. We're gonna make burn ends here and we're gonna make our slices here. Take our knife and just follow that fat line down. There we go. Place the brisket over here for just a minute. And with burnt ends, you're gonna take them and you're gonna make them into about 1-inch cubes. So we're gonna slice down like this. I tell you, it's very tender. Just like that. And then we're gonna take them and cube them like that. Now, one thing we're also gonna do with these burnt ends is we're gonna put some Brisket Mop right here that we have on it, and we're gonna throw it back on the smoker for just to let it harden up a little bit, get that crust on there a little bit better, cooking its au jus, all the juices that it came with here. But I can tell you, these look pretty damn perfect. A lot of fat on some of these, which when you're doing competition, it's not necessary that you could turn in burnt ends, but if you have some good ones that don't have a huge layer of fat in it, here we see some giant layers of fat. So if you have some good ones like this that have some good moisture in there, we're gonna put these back in here. Put the burn ends and the juices here. And we're gonna let them sit in their juices for a minute. And then we're gonna put some Brisket Mop on it in just a second. Next, we're gonna take our slicing knife here, and the grain was running kind of this way right here. This is where I had notched it off right here. And again, you're doing just some nice thin slices. That one's not thin to start, but thin slices. These aren't very thin. And that's what our barbecue competition brisket looks like. You still see that we have the fat on the bottom right here. I told you when we're turning in our slices, we would take those and cut that fat right off, just like that. Some people sauce them. If you're in Texas, you don't really sauce them. Now, if the barbecue community is going to destroy me here, that's fine. This is not perfect brisket. This is not perfect barbecue. But for competition, again, it's very, very different. So one thing we would take is our brisket mop, and we would just pour that over a little bit, kind of spray it on. We'll get some of that going over here on our burnt ends. And presentation is key. So you take your brush and you make sure that you get it covered all the way around where you get some great color. And the key here is that you have one bite with the judges. They are gonna take one bite of your barbecue, and you're gonna lay these in a blind box or a styrofoam container, and you're just gonna line them up all the way across. Again, much thinner slices than I made here. Kind of like this. Make sure that everything has some good color on it. You're gonna have some parsley in there probably. You're gonna lay it on there, and you hope and pray for the best. And when it comes to competition barbecue also, there are time limits on there. So turning in your stuff on time is extremely important. Most of the barbecue community starts at about 4 a.m., something like that, starting with the longer cooks, and goes in. Now this would score terribly at a competition. I'm not gonna lie to you and say that this would be the best, but I wanted to give you the basics of how backyard barbecue does not always translate to competition barbecue. Competition barbecue is very different. There are different rules and regulations for each competition and each company out there, especially when it comes to like KCBS or statewide barbecue associations. Here we have what would be a pretty good brisket. We'll try a bite here just to see how it tastes. I like a little bit of the fat in there. And I'll grab myself a burn in here too. That's really good. It's tender, a little give. Now the point has a lot more fat in it. It retains a lot more moisture. This one honestly came out a little dry. I'm not gonna lie to you. It came out a little bit dry. I probably cooked it a little too fast. The flavor though is still amazing. KosmosQ, Grillahollics SPG Twisted. This stuff is amazing. This is not the you know, barbecue porn that you would see where people squeeze out the juices and everything else, but the flavor is here. It is a little tough, it is a little chewy. The burn ends are perfect. This is not. But competition barbecue is a little bit different. This is just one way to do it. Don't follow my recipe exactly. Find out some of the other barbecue experts out there as well, because I'm pretty sure you would get bottom of the barrel with this turn in. But we're gonna be doing a series on that, so make sure you follow, make sure you share this video, comment how terrible this looks, dislike the video, like the video, whatever you like. Links for the SPG, the ThermoPro meat thermometer that I used to check sure, make sure it was tender and everything else. This came out great to me. I'm sure the flavor is there for a lot of other people. My name is Mark Ashby of Grill Mark Co. Make sure you eat well, you do well. We'll see you next time.